I'm loath to admit it, but DSLRs are kind of done. With mirrorless cameras taking over the market, I think it's a great time to look at how far DSLRs progressed. They're obviously the first professional digital format of camera. Some medium format sneaking in there as well, but until recent years it wasn't actually that good. It was more of a way for people not to feel absolutely brutalised by buying an RZ and having all this kit and everyone going, well, digital's cool. Now, you're all going to get very mad at this video. I cannot cover every type of photograph. So this is going to be a very specific video. I'm going to look at how good they've got for me as a commercial still life photographer. If you want to see me test it as a documentary photographer, as a wildlife photographer, as someone who photographs midges under the light of a candle, let me know in the comments below. I will absolutely make a video for that and we'll pick some different cameras. But for this video, we're comparing two cameras, one from 2004, one from 2015, which I still use today. And the reason we've selected these two cameras is, the one I still use today, Canon 5DSR, is Canon's last studio camera. It is their last foray into studio photography at a professional level with a DSLR. It's a 50 megapixel CMOS sensor. It's a very good bit of kit. It is the best bang for buck you can get for the work I do. I would love to be telling you I've got a 1D down here, the original one, the CCD sensor, but they're like gold dust and they cost a fortune. But also it wouldn't be a fair comparison. We're not going with the first DSLR. We're going with the first studio DSLR, which was good. And in 2004, it was this guy here, the Canon 1DS Mark II. And the reason this is the one we're choosing is, this is the first digital camera that was better than film. It's a 16.7 CMOS sensor. It's got autofocus points all over the shop. So this here was before the 5D Mark II with its center autofocus point that worked. This has got a full array of autofocus points. It's got a bit of a burst mode, but not too much, because although not high megapixel by today's count, it's pretty high. Let's just compare that to this one. You ready for a race? The 50 megapixels slightly faster. And I know you can look at the frames per second, but it doesn't always, I don't find that being told it's 5, 7, 14, 23 frames a second actually means that much until you hear it and you go, ah, yes, I've missed the droplet because that frame didn't fire. But there we go. This is where it started. This is a tank of a camera. I bought it with my own hard-earned cash. It was £175. I've always wanted this camera, always wanted it. But when I wanted it, it was £6,000. That is some serious devaluation. Now, how we're going to compare these cameras is as follows. We're going to look at the build quality, the usability, and of course, some pixel peeping, which I secretly love to do, on the laptop at the image quality. I'm going to do some test shots. All of them will be relative to the work I do. We'll only be looking at things which actually matter in this arena. I won't be going to look for the mosquito under candlelight. So, first of all, build quality is amazing on the 2004 1DS Mark II. This camera here is so well built. The 1DS Mark III and the 1DX lineup are also well built. It's not like this is better than them, but it's a beast. Now, this particular one I've got looks pretty much brand new. There's a little bit of wear and tear on the hot shoe, but apart from that, it's pretty immaculate. It's weather sealed. It's got a dual card slot, which I know a lot of people get very funny about. And also, look, it's not just a dual card slot, but it's a proper weather sealed backdoor dual card slot. CF and SD, I've got both in there at the moment. It's just a very well built bit of kit. Now, the other great thing is, and I don't know whether this is something which came in it as standard or someone's upgraded it, because you used to be able to up until the 5D Mark II, it's got a split screen focus in there, which means as you focus the lens manually, the images come together in the center split screen. Modern cameras don't have that. They rely on autofocus points, which is great. But if you've ever, like me, shot weddings or documentary, you'll know that sometimes, doesn't matter what autofocus system you've got, when it's that hazy and that backlit, it ain't going to focus. Also, if like me, you're a bit of a sucker for a manual focus lens, this split screen is absolutely brilliant. I love it. But the build quality is great. It is much better than this camera here, but assuming they're both in the studio, I don't think any of those things matter. The other feature, if you're a landscape photographer, it has a special curtain. This is on the actual eyepiece here. So you can do that to make sure no light leaks in. I assume this was an issue with film, and it probably wasn't an issue with digital because I've never seen this on a camera since the olden days. But correct me in the comments, as I know you love to, if I'm wrong. Autofocus, the two of these perform very similarly in a studio environment, not in a sporting one. This has a bunch of autofocus points. That has a bunch of autofocus points. In all reality, having shot on a 5D Mark II for 10 years and never missed focus with it, I always just use the center point because I think it's more likely that I've got some random autofocus point up here selected when I want to be focusing in the center or down here, and I mess up because of that, than I mess up because of poor autofocus. There's still that human element in there. I don't trust fully automatic point selection, so I just like a center point, frame recompose, or just manual override with the focus. I've always found that easier, faster, and more reliable. And of course, I've got to use some pretty cool cameras in my time, but that's how I like to work. It's not how you have to work, it's how I like to work. Now, the 5DS and 5DSR system, build quality not as good. Little plastic flappy, like, battery doors. Still dual card slot, same thing. SD, compact flash as well. Very good bit of kit. Magnesium alloy body, much lighter, which is good. And generally a good bit of kit. A few more custom functions in here which people seem to like the delayed shutter, the mirror up and stuff like that. Never used any of it. I basically use 125th of a second, f10 to f16 and 100 ISO or 200 ISO sometimes. Now in terms of usability, this camera, despite having great image quality and a slightly filmic look to the images, has atrocious modern day usability. You can't tether it. The digital input here is some yesteryear thing. You used to be able to tether it back on 32-bit Windows machines, but there's no software now which allows you to tether this. So it is literally shooting and seeing on the screen only, and the screen, it leaves something to be desired. The screen itself is pretty useless. You don't know if you're in focus. You can see the exposure's good, but that's it. It's a bit like shooting film, to be honest. It's a bit blind. You'll know if you've completely messed it up, but there's no real fine tuning in there. Whereas the screen on the 5DSR is brilliant. You can literally take a shot, zoom in and see whether it's completely sharp. You can tell whether the exposure's right or not. And of course it has tethering, which works today. Every studio photographer I know, and even actually every location photographer I know, who isn't a documentary one, shoots tethered. We all just shoot tethered. So you put your tether cable in here. I use Area 51, bang it in there, and it is good to go. The usability of this is brilliant. I don't really know what more you'd want from a camera. It's got an HDMI out that I use. It's got a PC sync cable that I use. Don't really use a microphone port. It's got your little thing here for your intervalometer, which we also use. Like, all of this functionality here is everything I need down here and nothing else. I mean, sure, maybe I'll put a microphone on if I'm doing a quick vlog, but I'm now in different cameras, so don't need to. But extremely usable. Everything here has an individual button for what it needs to do. Whereas on the 1DS, you have to play kind of like a Tetris game where you have to press these two for drive, these two for ISO, and there's like combinations of buttons, and this harps back to their film cameras. They're the same there. You can get to everything without going into the menus, but like changing ISO is not as simple as pressing one button. You have to press two buttons in combination and then change ISO. And speaking of which, ISO on this camera is 100 to 1600. Now, I'm not going to look at my computer here, but I'm going to tell you, I don't know what this goes to because it never goes above 200. I have no idea. Now, of course, it might be a useful spec for you if you need high resolution, very noisy photos. Don't know. But I think it's just something which the sensor could do, so they gave it a number to advertise. Because if you're buying a 50 megapixel camera to shoot studio work with, after 200, you're like, I don't really understand what you're doing. So they both go up higher than they need to. I've shot this recently at 1600 ISO. It looks pretty beautiful. I shot this at 1600 ISO. Looks all right. Meh, not really relevant to what we're doing. But what is relevant is the image quality. And I think that's what we need to look at. Now, of course, the price difference here is huge. These here you can get for £200 easily. The 5DSR is £500. That leaves a £1,300 price gap. If you don't need to tether, which is the only thing this camera can't do that one can do in a commercial sense, which one should you go for? Let's dive into the computer, let's look at some images, and let's discuss. So what I've done here, I've bought these in as TIFFs, and I've rendered them out at the same resolution before bringing them back in again. So this way, as we zoom in, resolution's not part of the equation. Now, we're going to talk about resolution because that's obviously a huge part of the upgrades. But for this particular testing here, we're not. We're going to look at image quality. And in these images here, we're sort of taking it from the viewpoint, maybe you're a landscape photographer, an interiors photographer, someone not using flash, but shooting wide dynamic ranges. Now within the shot here, we have the bright window. We have the dark shadows. We have LED lights. These are the same color, but they've been brought out differently. We've got plants. We've got all sorts going on. Now I'm going to talk you through what I see. You might see differently, and also please note that what you're seeing is YouTube's compressed version of this. And also the focus points are not bang on. I didn't quite nail that, so sorry. But starting from here, looks pretty much the same. Slight difference in color. It's slightly warmer here than it is here, and I have neutralized the white balance on each of them. This is weird though, because you see here this purple, this is blue, this is correct on this side here, and I'm not sure which one's which at this stage. I'm going to have to, hopefully the file names will give it away. But this is correct color reproduction, this is not. But coming up to here, I would say we're getting more highlight detail, not in the blown out areas, these are blown out here, but if you look at the plants, maybe slightly better on the left hand side. But the colour of the plants is better on the right hand side. That's better colours over here. The oven, I turned the light on in the oven just so we can get some warmth coming out of it. I'd say it looks more realistic on the right hand side. At a push, it's very, very difficult to tell the difference. Very close, you know. It's not a big difference, not notable. Scrolling around. The blinds, the colour again is better on the right hand side. And what I did was I took the white balance from this area here on the cupboard. So they've both got the same white balance. I'd say the yellow of the watering can looks better on the right. And I also say, considering I've made them both the same, it might be focus. The left one looks a bit sharper, but it could be that I've missed focus. I can't call that as a guarantee. And again, slightly better colouring on the softbox here than over here. And if we look at the colourful papers, again, yeah, better colour rendition on this side. In terms of dynamic range in the dark areas, I don't think either of them is better than the other. I couldn't pick them apart. Like, where it's dark, it's dark. There's no... Let's have a look at some of these foam bits up here. I can't tell them apart on my computer. I'm looking on a freshly calibrated computer in a pitch black room as well, by the way. We are all in on this one here. So, out of the two of these, I'd say the right-hand side one is the winner, which is... So I'm just going to dive into my back end. TIFF 1 is the 1DS Mark II. So the 1DS Mark II has better colour rendition than the 5DSR, or at least more natural. Whether that's better for you, I don't know, but it is more natural. Let's dive in to our product shots. Here we go. So we've got two shots here. Again, I've neutralised them, TIFF 3 and TIFF 4. Just having a quick look around. I've not neutralised the white balance. I didn't realise it needed it, but now looking at it, I'm just going to take it from here. Actually, I won't. I'll do it from this point here. It's that one, and the same here, just so you can see. Perfect. So here we have the two. The right-hand side one is slightly bluer on the background, I'd say. Maybe? Very difficult to say. So what do we have? What do we see? Firstly, I'd say there's more detail in the left-hand side one. Let's get rid of the text, we didn't see it. But there's better contrast in the right-hand side one. Now, for this shot here, we use the Zeiss Milvus Macro Planar. This lens is as good as you can get on a 35mm camera. As you can tell, this is a used bottle of Sif, or whatever it is, Mr. Muscle. But the left-hand side orange here is punchier, but the right-hand side metallic scrunchy is punchier, which is interesting. So I've got the bottle in front of me. This is a better rendition of the colour of that plastic than this is, but I would say that this is a better rendition of the high contrast black and white object than this is. Now, in terms of this blue one here, the left-hand side has the edge on colour, just looking at it in front of me under natural light. Now I've just put my my special balanced LED light on. That is better in that sense. So colour rendition, the left-hand side has it. Contrast, the right-hand side has it. Now here's what I want to find out. can I give it that contrast? I think I can. I've also just noticed, I've got these items next to me, I've got my lights on now. This one here does have a brown tint to it in real life, and it has got it here, whereas here that colour is not there. It's like, I can see it here, but the rest of it is gone. It's really monochromatic on it. Now I focus these ones perfectly. So these are bang on in focus. And the left-hand side is considerably sharper. Considerably so. So let me look and find out which one is which, because I do not have a clue. And again, the left-hand side is the 1DS Mark II. So again, better colours, not as good contrast. Now, the sharpness of the shot, I'm starting to doubt whether I maybe messed focus up, but then I can't see a sharper part on the 5DSR. I just can't find it. The 1DS does seem sharper than the 5DSR file. Of course, we've shrunk them both down a bit. Maybe that's had some play in it, but the left-hand image, I'm sure you can agree, is better. And again, let me just see if we can like bring up some, because we've added some contrast to that now. Let's just bring up some contrast here as well. Like once we start to punch it a bit, and this is how I edit, and this is quite pleasing to do. There we go. So that's what I'd come up with from there, something along those lines for my style of work. Obviously, everybody likes different things. There we go. So very quick rough edit. And yeah, you can see that, I mean, like, once you've messed around with them, they're very similar. I'm interested, did you know which ones? Let me know in the comments below. Did you know which one was going to be which? I assumed in terms of sharpness and colour accuracy, the 5DSR would be better, but I thought the 1DS Mark II would give better colour rendition in terms of like a more beautiful look rather than a more realistic look. But now that we've added sharpening to it, I would say that, I mean, look here. I'd say maybe the 5DSR has the edge. We look at the scrunchie. It's more detailed, isn't it? It is. It just is. So that's interesting. Straight out of camera, flat files, 5DSR not as good, but responds better to editing. And I assume if I pull out the actual raw file, which we'll do next. So here is the full resolution raw file. When we go to edit this, I mean, I'm quite snappy at editing these files because it's what I work with day in, day out. I just want to see how they respond, like how far can you push these files. The 5DSR files, like you can really, yeah, look at that, that's pretty nice. It really responds well to clarity and sharpening because it has that insane resolution, which is very good. And then let's just compare that to how the 1DS Mark II responds. So here's our 1DS Mark II file, straight out of camera. Let's give it a very quick just. Now what I notice straight away is moving the exposure slider, it doesn't respond as nicely. It doesn't respond as nice, like there's not much room here. We're really, and like it might have captured the scenes well, but for post-production we're really struggling with what we can actually do here. It's very like, you move it a bit and it's just gone. Again, still super sharp image, super sharp. But it is quite difficult to actually, there's not much room once you've got the file. We've got to get it much more spot on in camera. So just taking these two edited files now, and if we just put them up here, you can see the left-hand side, this is our 5DSR, and the right-hand side is our 1DS Mark II. Can you see how much more detail there is now after post-production and using the 50 megapixels? We've got more shadow detail here, for sure, but doesn't it look better over here? What do you think? What are your thoughts on this? I mean, they're both pretty sharp, but look how much more resolution we have here. That's the difference in terms of do we want to crop. But then the colours, you know, it's a real tough one. They both do great things. So what did we learn? Firstly, DSLRs haven't come on that long in all of that time. The colours were better back here, in the 1DS world, but the usability and the ability to edit the files is better today. But if you're getting it right on camera, if you're shooting in a studio, how much does that matter? Now, I could never use this professionally for a couple of reasons. One is resolution. We often have to do insane cropping on our images. They'll want us to shoot something and then they'll want an insane crop afterwards. They don't tell you that in advance. It's always some delayed creative idea. So I need the resolution. I can't go below 50 megapixels. And whenever it's a big paying job, we don't go below 100. And more often than not, we're using the 150 megapixel phase back. There's no way I'm going back down to this resolution. If I was shooting though, and I was doing it not tethered, and I was doing it for clients paying less than £1,000 for a shoot, I'd buy a £200 one of these. It'll last longer, it's built better, the colours are nicer straight out of camera. The functionality as a non-tethered camera is better. The split screen focusing, the build quality, the feel of it. This is a tank of a camera. It's really good, but it doesn't have the usability I need. I must be able to tether and I must have high resolution. And live view, because I use this Cambo camera with all the tilty, shifty, jiggery pokery, I need live view to focus. My eyesight, I'm getting old. My eyes aren't as good as they once were. Live view is very useful for me. I wouldn't trust split screen using tilt, shift, swing, rise, fall, and all of that sort of stuff. It is too much for my eyes in such a tiny viewfinder. Sure, on a 4x5 ground glass I can do it, but in a 35mm viewfinder, I need a digital screen. But now here's the question. If the only real difference between these two cameras in all of that time, which spans my entire career pretty much, is tethering and a bit more resolution, what will mirrorless bring to our industry? Now, this is not talking about all the other people photographing nits under candlelight and, you know, upside down underwater, whatever it may be. We're just talking about this for now. What can it bring? What are we missing here? I mean, sure, I'd like 150 megapixels inside a Canon at Canon's pricing rather than 50 grand on a phase 1 back, but that's not realistic. Better color depth, a better bit depth, a higher bit depth, and before someone goes, you can only print at this bit depth anyway. Yes, we know that. You need the better bit depth so you've got more options in post-production to produce that print, not to print it or display it on a screen. But better bit depth, for sure. If they start bringing out better bit depth in mirrorless, I'll be considering that. If they start bringing up high resolution, I don't know what the limits of a 35mm sensor are. I assume we're pretty close to it because it's been a while since we've gone up from 50, isn't it? So what else is there for us still life, studio, interior, landscape photographers? I don't know, but let me know what you'd like in the comments below and let me know what you'd like me to test next because I'm looking forward to it. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.